Okay, teacher Will, it's okay now.
Okay.
Yes, you can start.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for calling and thank you for joining this live Instagram. I would, let me introduce myself briefly, and then I want to thank you very much for having me and hosting me. Tonight's conversation will be as it relates to improving one's fluency and pronunciation. And then one of the things, let me just go into it. I'm on my phone. If I can log into my laptop, I'm actually doing that as we speak. And then hopefully I will be able to share the information with you as well in the presentation that I presented. If not, then that's no problem. Then I will make sure that you will have that at a subsequent appointment. So 1 second. Can you, teacher, I'm going to try to log in. Can you give me the Zoom login, the Zoom 892?
Just a minute.
Actually, I can go to your Instagram. Hold on 1 second. 892.
892 6.
I have, yep, 6. I have a teacher. Hold on 1 second. 0209. And then join. I'll put the password in. 003321. Okay, I'm gonna leave. Okay, let me in. I'm gonna leave this call and then I'll be on my laptop. All right, I'm gonna leave out of here so that way you can have me. Bye.
Yes. Okay, no problem.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a presentation that I'd like to share with you. And if you give me a moment, I will open that up. A little bit about myself. So my name is Teacher Will, and I am from the United States of America. I happen to be a native English speaker. That's great. But why do I say that's great? Well, at the end of the day, English is a global international language. And so everyone on this call has a right to the English language. How I came into the teaching field. It actually ended up that I was in the business world for many, many years, over 20 years in the business world, across 4 different industries: telecommunications, marketing, telecommunications, marketing, clinical research. And so I moved and translated or migrated into the English language teaching industry. Why? Basically, because I needed a job and I went back to school. I'll be celebrating my 10th year anniversary very soon in October. And I went back to school and received my TESOL certification. I would recommend anyone that is currently teaching to get their teaching certification, whether it is a TESOL, a TEFL, or even a CELTO. Why? Well, even though I'm a native English speaker, for me, the value of getting a TESOL, for me, I found important because of the aspect, whereas it allowed me to learn the basic aspects of teaching. What does classroom management look like? How to prepare for a lesson plan. And so shout out, I will always say to my directors, shout out to Mira and Deborah, who were my teachers in terms of that. All right, now I should be able to share my screen, which I can. Great. All right, so with that being said, so 20 years of business experience, TESOL certification. I've had the opportunity to teach various different classes, whether they were general English, business English, American culture, cultural immersion, IELTS, everything. And I'm really like that. So also, some people call me a social media influencer. I like to think of myself as a motivational and educational influencer. And I also have the opportunity to be a Goodwill ambassador, and that happened in 2009. That is extremely important and valuable to me. So I want to talk about important English terms, the following: accent, dialect, fluency, and pronunciation, because oftentimes I think it's been my experience within the ELT industry and also as it relates to teachers, and more importantly, in addition to that, students, we sometimes people confuse the terms. What I would define is accent is the distinctive way in which you speak. And your accent is shaped by many different factors, from the time that you were born, your socioeconomic level, your educational level. That is accent. Now, many people desire, for many different reasons, and it's fine to have a native speaking accent. They want to sound like an American. They want to sound like a Brit. That, from my perspective, as someone who's a native English speaker, one's accent, having a native accent is, in my opinion, aspirational. Let me say that again, it's aspirational. I understand that I have the privilege of being a native English speaker. I was born in the United States of America, yet within the United States of America, there are over 20 different regional accents. From my perspective, accent is your identity. And oftentimes what happens is in the industry, teachers and learners have this desire, and I believe ultimately they're conditioned to have a native accent. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how and what people think, there's a standard out there. I do not subscribe into this fact that native, non-native. I do not believe that you need to have a native speaking accent. If you do, then that involves shadowing and copying. What is dialect? Dialect is, or the way that I'm defining dialect, is the ability when you take your vocabulary, you take grammar, you communicate English in the manner that you're doing that is based on where you live, your region. So for example, if you're a native Arabic speaker, then the way that Arabic is spoken, it's an Arabic dialect that is different from Lebanon and or Saudi Arabia and or Oman. Yet, if your native language is Arabic, or in the case of English, what binds us is the aspect of fluency. And anybody that decides to be a member, part of the ATW family, or students that I have, either in group settings or individual courses that I get, I focus on fluency. How am I defining fluency? The ability to communicate English with ease, to convey your thoughts, ideas, beliefs, hopes, and dreams, and or the same way that you communicate in your native language. Under the aspect of fluency is the following: enunciation, intonation, clarity, and the big one, pronunciation, how you pronounce or say words. And I wanted to just do that as briefly as a highlight because I believe that it is very important to understand the difference, or at least give my perspective on that. So oftentimes people have problems with pronunciation. I like to use an analogy. Listen, if you imagine for a moment that you have a cake. What are the ingredients of a cake? Flour, water, baking powder, right? That is the foundation of a cake. So if you think of English as a cake, think of the foundations of English would relate to clarity, pronunciation, intonation, and enunciation, pronunciation, clarity. Those are the foundation. Then if you want to decorate your cake, or if you have a particular topping or filling or frosting, whether it's blueberry, whether it is chocolate, whether it's vanilla, think of that icing as accent, all right? But focus on pronunciation. Now, how can one improve their pronunciation? How can you learn how to pronounce or say words, to clearly enunciate or to pronounce words in the English language? The following suggestions: get physical. What do I mean? For those of you, most of you on the call, there is a term called phonetics. And phonetics is basically understanding how consonants, vowels, and structures within the English language works. Phonetics. Your mouth is a tool. It is a machine. And the combination of working your tongue, your lips, your jaw, your teeth, everything, understanding phonetics is one way to improve your pronunciation. Another concept, the concept of mimicking or shadowing. If there is someone out there that you believe, regardless of their origin, I do not care if they're native or non-native, again, that's aspirational. But if you believe or think that someone is a good pronouncer of the English language, then what you can do is you can copy, mimic how they are pronouncing their words, looking at their intonation, looking at their stress, understanding the clarity. And it is important to understand from my perspective, I do not believe it is necessary to speak English fast. A lot of teachers out there, respectfully, and also learners think and believe I need to speak English fast so I can be fluent. It is more important to be clear. So in the concept of mimicking, you want to shadow or mimic those people, again, that you feel pronounce words correctly. And in addition to that, remember, we communicate two ways, verbally and also non-verbally. So not only looking at an individual as it relates to, okay, is what's coming out of their mouth well, but what is their body language? Because over 65% of the language that we communicate, whether it's your native language and or English, is done by non-verbal communication. I love to sing. Singing is an excellent way to improve your pronunciation. And you can figure out what type of genre, type of music that you can listen to. Sing in the shower, sing in the day, sing in your car. And if you have the ability to learn or watch the lyrics while singing, that would be an excellent thing. One of the things, the greatest things that I think, or one of the strongest things I think to improve your pronunciation is to record yourself. Why do I say that? There are some teachers out there, along with some learners out there, that do not like the way that they speak English. They do not like the way that they speak. So when you watch yourself and you record yourself, what are you looking for? You're looking for how your mouth is moving. And also from a verbal perspective, how your mouth is moving, how are you communicating things? And in addition to that, you're also, as I said earlier, you are looking at your body language. So if indeed you're speaking English, are you displaying confidence? Are you displaying a sense of self-assuredness? Recording yourself is very important. Why? Because also, or in addition to that, you have the ability to monitor your progress. Oftentimes we tell learners, monitor yourself by recording yourself. Are you, or as we as teachers, doing that? So we have three different ways of learning: visual, tactile, auditory. I would encourage those individuals on this call to record yourself and use that as a barometer or a measurement to both look at the things that you are doing well and then look at the things, not that I want to call weaknesses, but then look at those as areas of development. Intonation and stress. Most of the time when we are speaking our native language, we are not speaking like this. We're not monotone. Understanding to improve your pronunciation, understanding the intonation. English, as any other language, has a rhythm, has a flow. So if you mimic those individuals that you feel are good as it relates to pronunciation in English, watch their rhythm, watch their stress. Hello, my name is William. And again, English, the English language, when we're speaking, we learn words in context, and stress and intonation is extremely important. So for example, what do I mean by that? Let's use the word really. I could sit back and say, really? 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 So understanding intonation and stress can communicate various different messages. And the last thing that I would say in terms of ways to improve your pronunciation, ask for help. Let me say that again, ask for help. Now let me make a comment as someone who is a teacher, who is also a student, also someone who knows how to speak another language other than English. There is nothing to matter, particularly teachers, there's nothing to matter for asking for help. Now, if you feel as though that your English is not at the level that you want, if you feel or believe or think though there are areas of development that you need to improve as it relates to your pronunciation, as it relates to your teaching techniques, as it relates to vocabulary or grammar, there are many different free resources out there. And yet, if you believe or think as though that you are not getting the results that you want, I strongly encourage you to ask for help. Make an investment in yourself and pay for a teacher, a coach, whatever, to assist you with your learning goals. How interesting it is that we tell oftentimes learners that it's kind of like, you know what, learners are people in general. Let me use an analogy with myself. If I want to lose weight, I have the ability to lose weight by myself. I can go to the gym, I can go on a diet. And yet, if I'm not getting the results that I want, I would hire a personal tutor. The same applies for you and or your learners. So with that being said, those are particular ways that, just some of the ways that you can improve your pronunciation. To conclude, what I would say is the following. English is a journey. Your pronunciation is a journey. Fluency is a journey. If you are the type of individual, which is your business, I want you to think of the following. Did you learn your native language, whatever your native language is, overnight? Did you learn it in 30 days, 60 days? Most people would say no. English is no different. Fluency is a lifelong process. It is not a sprint. And for those of you, I don't know, you don't have to answer me, but for those of you that think or believe that you can learn English in 30 days or 60 days, and if you buy courses about that, or even if you are a type of teacher that says that, that's your business, that's not my experience. Because if it does not apply to your native language, then it certainly wouldn't apply to English. You'll understand that fluency is a lifelong process. There is a difference between fluency and proficiency is defined by particular tasks or skills that you're able to do across the foreign language skills. Focus on your pronunciation again. Consider that one of the foundations of fluency. And accent, it is not, in my opinion, necessary to sound like a native. I understand the industry promotes that. I understand that there are many people on the call that are conditioned to believe that, both in terms of the content that you watch, and then also possibly the requests from your students. So I understand that, but that's not my focus. And the last thing I would say is, at the end of the day, when you're copying and you're mimicking someone or you're shadowing someone, at the end of the day, have fun, enjoy English, and make English your own. It is own. Last thing I would say, practice. I do not believe in the concept of practice makes perfect, because I do believe, as teachers and also learners and students of English, sometimes perfection is an illusion, and it prevents learners from achieving their English goals. So for me, I like to say practice makes better and practice makes permanent. And at the end of the day, have fun with the language, make an investment in yourself. With that being said, I do have a hard stop at 10 o'clock because I do have a class, but I wanted to take this time and now answer as many questions as possible. Last thing I would say is, if indeed, I'd be more than happy to share this information. I'll send the presentation to whoever wants it. If anyone wants to contact me, this is my social media on Instagram and YouTube, ask_teacher Will. And then if you're interested in TikTok, it's ATW1.0. But I want to thank you very much for the time. Let me shut up and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Will. Teacher Will, sorry.
No problem. I was like, not a doctorate.
Thank you.
I have 2 grad degrees. I don't know if I'm going to get a doctorate. Maybe
You
one
are a
day.
doctor now because you are teaching us, so you are a doctor. Teacher Will, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure. Let me stop sharing. Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think some students, as teachers, why do you think some students have pronunciation problems, especially non-native speakers?
Okay, beautiful question. Number one, and again, the thoughts that I'm going to share is just my perspective. I believe, number one, they're comparing themselves to natives, and I believe that native speakerism exists. And that, to me, is something that personally I don't believe in. And that's something that I fight against. So number one, because they are conditioned to believe that there's a standard of English out there, and consciously or subconsciously, based on the content that they watch, based on the teachers that they have, they feel less than. That's number one. Number two, lack of confidence. Number three, lack of practice. One of the most important things I think in my own English journey, and also as someone who speaks a foreign language, is to recognize that, you know what, for me, I need to compare myself to myself. And I need to understand it. So this really just bothers me in the industry. We say that English is a global international language, and yet most of us or the majority of learners out there hear messages that are conscious messages or subliminal messages saying that people need to sound like me. I hear many people times say, oh, Teacher Will, you know what? I want to speak like you. I want to have your accent. No, you don't. Why are you going to speak like me? You don't need to speak like me. And when learners say that, when people want me to, when they want to have courses with me, whether it's individual or group setting, when people say that to me, I'm like, listen, this is honestly what I say. I say, listen, I will teach you the basics of fluency, pronunciation, enunciation, the aforementioned, right? And then what I will teach you is this: you don't need to sound like me, but what I will do is that I will educate you on the bias and prejudices of thinking about how, or putting you in situations and environments of how to overcome that negative bias or prejudice. So I think those are the three main issues. I hope I answered your question.
Yes. Okay, so if a student mispronounces some words,
yes,
is there still a chance to be understood?
Yes, I think there are. And I think as teachers, number one, so as a teacher, there's certainly, teachers have the opportunity to do correction techniques, listening techniques, most definitely. And I do think as learners, I think particularly, here's what I would say. If a learner is beginning, if they're at the beginner levels or the elementary levels, I encourage my students just to speak. And as they become higher up in the proficiency level, then what becomes important is that certainly I focus more on accuracy and clarity. So there's always an opportunity. And I do think that one of the things that we need to do, or at least I try to do, is like, hey, when learners, particularly at the beginner levels, are just learning a language, they're so afraid of making mistakes. Hey, no. That's part of the learning process. So yes, I think if we, as teachers, put together a process and tools of doing that, it is possible, barring any physical or mental disabilities. But yeah, it's possible by studying phonetics, also by doing tongue twisters, for example.
Okay, so Dr. Atiyah wants to ask you a question.
Yes. Hi, doctor.
Hi, Mr. Wallal. I'm really happy to listen to you, and thank you very much for the time.
Pleasure.
You spent with us. But the question is, what's the difference between a native and non-native English teacher from your own perspective?
Okay, that's a really great question. So let me answer it like this. First and foremost, teaching is a profession. Teaching is an art. What I would say is someone that is a native English speaker, just because I'm a native English speaker does not make me a good teacher. Number one. Teaching is a profession, it's an art, it's a skill. And for me, I believe as though that what happens is that I think that each of us in the industry personally, well, I can't speak for everybody in the industry. Let me speak for myself. I first recognize that. So ultimately, teaching is based on qualifications that would include educational experience, work experience, skills, and talents. Now, specifically with respect to a native and non-native, I think that's an oxymoron. I think ultimately from a learner's perspective, it comes in terms of what their preference is, what the particular preference is. There are some learners that have a preference toward native because they think that they're learning the truer English, or they think that they're able to pronounce words better, or they might want to learn a cultural aspect. Those are some advantages of a native. But there are also advantages of quote unquote, non-native English teachers. What's the advantage? Well, the possible advantage for that might be is that, hey, the learner might feel as though that they understand their journey more and the pain struggles there. So at the end of the day, I don't subscribe to that. I think what happens is there is bias and there is a standard of English that I'm over that debate, doctor. And I think what I try to do with the limited platforms that I have is let's talk about the qualifications. Let's talk about the bias and the prejudices that exist. Because at the end of the day, we're teachers. Learners have a preference, but I think it's all of our responsibilities. I don't think that there's personally a difference. I think what happens is that learner makes a decision, because there are people that I know that are teachers that were not native English speakers, or I'm sorry, that were not born into native English speakers that are excellent teachers. So at the end of the day, we have a responsibility for that. And I think it's important to actually have those conversations and talk about the prejudices and biases, because the elephants in the room, we all know it, but a lot of times people don't really feel comfortable talking about that. Did I answer your question, doctor?
I definitely agree. The reason for asking that question is a similar situation that took place about 11 years ago. I'm working in Saudi Arabia in one of the universities, okay? And
Yes.
in 2010, we were working with a British company. If you might have heard of it, it's Bill Education from Britain.
I do. Doctor, I'm sorry, brother. Let me interrupt you very quickly. Let me say this. And you make a valid point because I have 3 minutes. I have to go to my class, but they can wait 1 minute.
Okay.
But let me say this. I think what you're illustrating is exact point. And for me, is like, if you decide to follow me and be part of the ATW family on Instagram and YouTube, I have a lot of conversations. I think it is time that a couple things. Number one is that we have those conversations and we elevate the aspect of teaching and we talk about that. I mean, for example, I'm a native English speaker. I recognize that's a privilege. I recognize that's a privilege, but I recognize that everybody does not have the same privilege that I do. I recognize the fact that there are certain countries and companies and industries that will only hire a native. I understand that and I recognize that. So I understand that. And so as a result of being a native, hey, listen, for me, it's kind of like there are some people that like the fact that I'm native, but don't necessarily like the way that I look. That's a reality. And so the only way I think that we as a community, if we decide to do that, is bring that up, is with what we're able to control within our atmosphere and with our environments, if that makes sense.
Totally agree. The university insisted on natives. Fortunately, the committee that came from Britain said, we don't believe in natives and non-natives. We believe in one thing, qualified teachers.
Right, and even last point on that, and even I would encourage people in their country, right? And their students. The question is, okay, it's intent. When people say native, there's an intent behind that. There's a subliminal message, implicit or direct by it. When you say native, what does that mean? And so I think those are things that we need to have conversations, because it's kind of like, listen, if somebody decides to take a course or a program with me, it's kind of like, I'm not arguing with preference. People have preference, but let's talk about what that means. And again, if we have teachers on the phone, I mean, I understand I have a privilege. So when people and learners and non-native teachers come to me and say, well, William, you don't understand. And it's kind of like, you know what, my learners want me to be like that. So I do have empathy and sympathy toward that, but I'm kind of like, that's kind of been my passion, again, as someone's a native. Let me say this, doctor, and then the host. If you ever want to have me back, I would be more than happy to join again for a longer conversation. I do apologize because I was on the wrong time zone. So I do apologize.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But if you ever want to have me back, we can definitely do that. And then also I would encourage anybody, if anybody is interested in terms of like wanting to do private consulting with me or whatever like that, you can contact me on the fellow channels. So
I just want to show people, how do you teach your students and how you are so kind to your learners.
Born in the month of June. Well, so this is for you. Happy birthday to you.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. Listen, I will share my content.
You are my great teacher,
I am embarrassed. I'm very embarrassed. I apologize.
Okay,
well, no, at the end of the day, I think.
You promised me to make on September, inshallah.
I did. Listen, definitely listen. If you want to have me back, I will spend longer time with you. If that's something you want to do, we'll arrange it. I'd love to come back if you want me to come back. So I apologize for leaving so early, but anybody, seriously, I'll send the presentation later. If you want to work with me or talk with me one-on-one, I make myself available. If you're interested in doing like a group class or whatever like that, or consult, we can do that. So have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your day. And thank you so much. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, teacher. Well,
bye.
Bye. Goodbye.